Welcome to the Young CEOs Mastermind Call. We host these every single Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am your host. My name is Andre Kennedy, aka Free Play Dre. You guys can find my socials up there. And we're going to dive into some valuable information today. Each and every Sunday, we talk about credit, finances, strategies, and techniques that I have learned that have helped me to acquire $150,000 worth of credit capital. And I also have assets such as real estate, rental cars, and also a vending machine, which creates passive income for me. So it allows me to freely do these videos in my spare time. And it allows me to teach and coach you guys on how you can potentially do the same things, if not better. Okay, so today is going to be an exclusive video. We're actually going to dive into some misconceptions when it comes to this credit space. Okay, so without further ado, let's discuss number one. Number one is going to be that student loans don't affect your credit score. Okay, a lot of people have that misconception. That is false. Student loans are reported to the credit bureaus, and if they are not paid, can drastically affect your credit score. Okay? Now, that can start with late payments and that can end with collections, in other words, derogatory marks. So, student loans do, in fact, affect your credit. A lot of people, you guys, aren't aware of credit prior to going to college and getting a degree, which is very understandable. But they didn't teach us this stuff in school. And when you go to get a loan to go to your college or whatever version of school that you're going to do, the idea is to go in with the mindset that you're going to have to pay a debt back. Okay, that loan that you took out to go to school, sometimes your parents will pay it if you're lucky. If you grew up in a wealthy family, you have your parents to basically foot that balance for you. Now, if you're not as fortunate, you will be responsible for paying back that amount of money that it took to go to college. Okay, so whatever job field you are desiring to go into, you need to make sure that you're going to be able to, one, secure that job field, and two, you're going to need to be able to make enough money yearly or annually to be able to pay your monthly balances on that loan. Okay, one missed late payment on that student loan can drastically affect your credit score. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to play catch up. Okay, so, student loans can be a good thing if you go to college and you acquire a skill that you can then use to generate money. Yes, you'll have to pay back the loan, but everything after the loan is, you know, profit generated from your skill, which is very good. Okay, obviously, it's trading time for money, but that's not necessarily a bad thing when you're able to make a nice salary. Okay? So that was number one. Number two is going to be all debt is bad debt. That is false. Debt itself is not bad, but it depends on the usefulness of the debt that you're acquiring. For example, there's liabilities, and there's assets. Okay? Now, when it comes to liabilities, you're essentially spending money on things that's not going to generate you money in return. For example, the student loans, so to speak. If you use student loans and you don't go and you go to school for a certain subject or a certain trade or a certain skill that you're trying to learn, and you come out of college without that skill learned, okay, and you didn't pay attention in college, you went to all the parties and you didn't really lock in, then you're going to have a debt that you still owe from going to college, and you're not going to have the skill to be able to secure the job position to be able to pay that debt back off, right? So it becomes all for none. Okay, and there's a lot of different examples of liabilities. Cars sometimes can be liabilities. as I mentioned, I own a rental car fleet. Okay. So that changes the nature of the vehicle. Okay. If it's being used and it's just sitting, okay, and it's making you pay out more than you have coming in, right? If you got a Mercedes Benz, but you work a McDonald's job or a lower income job, not saying McDonald's is bad, but if you have a lower income job, you can't necessarily foot that bill. Okay. That monthly expense is going to end up being too much in the long run, and eventually the car will get repoed. Okay. And it'll go into collections and you'll deal with the debt. That's going to be hard to get off of your credit profile. Now, fortunately for you guys, we do credit repair so we can take those things into account and we can get those things removed from your credit profile. But it is a hassle, right? The best thing to do is to prevent it prior to it happening. Okay. Now, in my case, I use cars as rental vehicles. Okay. I rent them out. So each car that I'm purchasing, I put on a rental car platform and I rent those cars out for roughly $1,500 a month. And those cars end up paying themselves off and generating me passive income moving forward. Okay. So there's liabilities and there's assets. So as for number two, all debt is not necessarily bad. Okay. We in the young CEO community, we utilize debt to our advantage and we buy assets with that debt, and that debt creates cash flow for us. Okay. So there's a lot of people that frown against debt because debt can be a trap if you're not utilizing it properly, if you're not well educated in the space when it comes to credit, which is why we created our course to be able to teach you guys and instruct you guys on how to utilize credit to your advantage, okay, and utilize debt to your advantage, okay. Now, number three is going to be another misconception, which is co-signing does not affect your credit. Okay? That is also false. Co-signing definitely affects your credit. Co-signing a loan or a credit card will definitely affect your credit score if the borrower misses a payment or exceeds the limit. Okay? You are just as responsible and your credit score can be penalized. For example, if you're married and you guys go to the dealership, you and your spouse go to the dealership, and you decide for whatever reason, maybe your spouse can't be approved by themselves, and they ask your spouse, "Hey, do you happen to have a cosigner?" And you step in as the cosigner, okay? Because your spouse, you love your spouse and you want to help them out, right? Well, you sign up as a cosigner to help them out. Okay? Now, what happens is you are now in a joint loan. Okay? So, any missed payments that your spouse may accrue for whatever reason, that is going to affect both of your credit scores. Okay? So, sometimes you have to be disciplined with saying no. And sometimes it can work out for your good. Sometimes you guys can both make those payments and make it easier on you. But the moral of the story is you need to go in with the education knowing that this can in fact affect your credit if they default and don't pay. Okay? A lot of times, unfortunately, people go through divorces, people go through breakups. If this is not a long-term situation, and even if it is a long-term situation, sometimes it's best to separate both people's credit profiles. Okay? If your spouse can't get approved for a loan, how about instead of being a cosigner, how about you become or they become an authorized user on one of your trade lines, which allows them to receive the inheritance of good credit, and they can then wait it out and get approved for their own auto loan with the benefit of your authorized user showing up on their profile. That would be my recommendation. Okay, but to reveal the truth of the situation, Co-signing will, in fact, affect your credit score. Okay. Now, number 4, a person has one credit score, which is another major misconception. Okay. That is false. There are different scoring models. For example, there's FICO 7, there's FICO 8, there's FICO 9, okay, and there's Vantage Score. Now, I know you guys are probably not as familiar with what those mean or what those are, okay, but those are different scoring models that the 3 major credit bureaus use, okay, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. There is a difference, okay? You're going to see, on your Experian maybe that your FICO, it's showing your FICO score. And if you look on Credit Karma, it's going to show your Vantage score. Okay. These are 2 different scoring models. And not to mention, these are 3 different bureaus. Okay. Now, if you paid for the Experian monitoring and you have all 3 FICO scores, you're going to see that it's not the same. It's what's showing on your Credit Karma, which is showing your Vantage scores for TransUnion and Equifax. Okay. Now, the major misconception here is basically people think that you're supposed to have the same score and the Vantage score is not accurate because it's not lining up with the FICO score. That is incorrect. Okay. It's different, but it's not necessarily inaccurate. Okay. The same information is being shown, but the scoring model's slightly different. You may see a discrepancy of about 5 to 10 points difference, okay, in score, but that is not drastically different. It's really based on the information that's on the score, okay? So the information is the important part, not necessarily the score, okay? And back to the question, a person doesn't only have one score, okay? They can have multiple scores. They're going to have one score for TransUnion, one score for Equifax, and one score for Experian, okay? Those are 3 different bureaus. So you can't even add them all up and divide them by what's there and get an average score because there's different scoring models as well. So you have to take each individual score for what they are, okay? So instead of saying that you have one credit score, you have 3, and you can explain all 3. Okay, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Now, another major misconception is you can't get a credit card with bad credit. That is another major misconception. That is false. You can get a credit card with bad credit. Now, these are called credit builders, obviously, right? These are called your credit builders. Now, a lot of times, these will require you to put up your own funds in order to secure these cards. That's why they're called secured cards. Okay, but these are cards that you can get with bad credit. Okay, now you're not going to get the high limits. You're not going to get the major banks, okay, with bad credit, unfortunately. So you can get a credit card with bad credit, but you might not be able to get some of the major credit cards with bad credit, if that makes sense to you guys. Okay. Now, if you guys are getting value, make sure you guys drop a like button. And if you have any other questions regarding maybe a misconception you might have or a question that you might have concerning credit, drop those in the comments. But we're going to continue moving through a few more misconceptions when it comes to the credit space. Okay. Another one's going to be paying off an old account will boost my credit score. That is also not necessarily true. It's a major misconception, and it's not necessarily true. Paying off an old account that was late will not, in most cases, be removed from a person's credit unless they have a written agreement with the creditor, okay, to delete that account once it's paid. Okay. So what does that mean? That means basically if you pay off a old collection or an old account that was on your credit profile, It's just going to simply show paid, okay? But it's not going to remove some of the negative history that was associated, like a late payment or that the fact that the account was once negative, okay? You want the account to be completely removed. And the only way to do that is to make an agreement with the creditor that if this account is paid, then it will be deleted once it's paid. And you need that in writing. Otherwise, they can say, oh, well, we never agreed to that, right? So that's something that you need to be aware of, because a lot of people will say, oh, if I pay off this credit account that's on my credit, then I'll be back to 700 credit score. And like I said, that is not necessarily true. What we do in the credit community that I have constructed is basically we get these negative items removed completely, okay, using our software, which is also known as Easy Disputes 2.0. We dispute these negative items and we get them removed off of your credit profile. So they don't just show paid, they show deleted, okay? And that's what you guys want. Now, another major misconception is going to be closing old accounts is a good thing. Okay, that kind of resonates with the last question that was just asked, which is paying off old accounts will boost my credit. But this one's saying closing old accounts is a good thing. Not necessarily, okay? Now, we're talking about credit cards and loans. Well, loans usually get paid off, okay? But we're talking about credit cards here. Now, closing a credit card is not necessarily a good thing. Why? Because if you didn't know, your credit score is made up of 5 factors. And one of those factors is your average credit age. Okay? So if you add up the ages of your accounts and you divide them by how many's there, you're going to get an average, right? And you're going to get the average number of years or months. Okay? And when it comes to that, if you delete those accounts that have a large amount of history, meaning they're 5 to 10 years old, if you let those accounts close, guess what? The history goes along with that, okay? And a lot of times it's better to shelf those accounts. I like to use that word, shelf these accounts, so that you can maintain that history, okay? The history is what's holding weight on a person's credit profile. So deleting that account is going to deplete the history, and now your average is going to be less, okay? Now, if you're deleting a most recent account and it's only a month or two old, it's not going to have as much of an effect. But if you are in fact deleting an account that is years, your oldest accounts, instead of deleting them, I would say shelf them and keep the history, okay? That's very important. So, another misconception is having a good credit score means you can get a good loan. That is also a misconception. A lot of people think, oh, because I have a 700 credit score, now I can get approved for $100,000. Okay? Not necessarily. A profile can have a high score with only 1 or 2 trait lines that are older, but without properly demonstrating the ability to handle multiple trade lines or loans will prevent any bank from lending you a sufficient amount of credit. Okay? That is also important, meaning, let's say you have 1 or 2 accounts, and that's the reason why your credit score is pretty high. Okay? When you go and you apply for a loan, let's say you're trying to get a $50,000 loan from the bank, they're not necessarily going to grant you that loan just based on your credit score, okay, in 1 or 2 trait lines. It all depends on the nature of those trait lines. And also it depends on the nature of the person's account. And I stress this heavily within my community because we don't want to focus so much on the score. It's about the profile, okay? If you have 1 account or 2 accounts on your profile and your score is 700, and you go to apply for a large loan, or you're in need of some capital for a business adventure or whatever the case may be, a lot of times they're going to hit you with the fact that you have a thin profile. Okay, that's banking terms. They call it a thin profile, meaning you haven't really demonstrated that you can handle multiple types of loans, let alone a $50,000 or $100,000 loan. Okay, the way that you do that is by acquiring lower trade lines at the beginning. You increase those credit limits over time, and you having access to those trade lines now shows the bank that, hey, this individual can handle $50,000 because your trade lines equal to or more than that amount. Okay? So you need to be able to demonstrate that to the banks in order to get access to big loans like that. Okay? So it's not necessarily about the score. I had somebody ask me about borrowing power. Okay? And, just because you have a high credit score doesn't necessarily mean you have the proper borrowing power. I teach my students how to acquire $150,000 worth of credit capital just like I have done. Okay? I have a stack full of credit cards that I have utilized to acquire assets such as real estate, rental cars, and vending machines. Now, I wasn't able to do that by not knowing how the banking system is working. So it's very important that you understand it's not just about the score, but it's about the profile. And with my community, I'm dedicated towards helping you guys to learn how to structure and build out a solid credit profile so that when you go to apply for that $50,000 loan or $100,000 loan, you can get approved. Okay, so you can find my course where I walk you through step by step by step. Even if you have bad credit, we repair your bad credit. We issue you trade lines that you can then acquire day one, even if you have bad credit, right? We talked about you can still get access to credit cards or loans and products, even with bad credit. I teach you guys how to do that. I teach you guys how to structure your credit profile and build up those current trade lines so that you can get access to $50,000, $100,000, all the way up to $150,000 total worth of credit capital. Okay. Now, that is pretty much the gist of some of the things that were major misconceptions. Now, let me know what is a misconception or an idea that you were told and you want to know if it's true or not. And maybe I can answer your question in the next video. Now, we do host these videos every single Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like I told you before, I am your host. My name is Andre Kennedy. I am well knowledgeable in this credit space. I will say God has blessed me to be able to do so. I've studied a long time. I've created a sequence and a strategy as to how I acquired $150,000, and I coach you guys exactly how to do that in my course at dazzler.com. So if you're interested, make sure you check out my website. If not, hopefully you guys got some value from this video. If you did, drop a like on this video and subscribe so that you get all upcoming information anytime we drop a brand new video. Make sure you hit that bell so that you get notified as well. So I'll see you guys next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And with that being said, hope you guys have a blessed evening.